Good morning. It is Sunday, November 19th, 2023. And let me go on and just say this on the beginning side of this. We have another great lesson before us this morning. We will be coming out of the book of Esther. And the subject of our lesson this morning is a time for courage. The focal verses are Esther 3, 2 through 3, 5 through 6a, and 4, 7 through 16. The aim for change says that by the end of the lesson, students will analyze Esther's faith in God when confronting opposition, be encouraged to face challenging situations, and commit to honor God when God's guidance seems absent. Now that's deep right there. So when you think about the word analyze, that means you're getting ready to look at some things and examine it, if you will. And then when you talk about being encouraged, it's ironic that is one of the aim for change, because on my way in this morning, the song that was on when I got out of the car was, sometimes you have to encourage yourself. Sometimes you have to speak victory over yourself. And no matter how you feel, speak the words and you will be healed. And it says encourage yourself. So that is so fitting with what we're getting ready to talk about as it pertains to Esther. And then the word commit, to honor God. That word commit means that when you say you are going to, you will. That is the short definition of it. If I say I am, I will. And so therefore, in your committing to honor God, even when his guidance seemed to be absent, the one thing that I've learned is that when we think God is not there, he's there. And so therefore, we're going to go further into this as we look at Esther in this time for courage. Does anybody want to say anything on this aim for change before we get further into this Sunday school lesson? All right, the In Focus says, after basketball practice, Deshaun heard some of the players bragging about how easy it was to steal from the mall stores. The guys were still laughing when the head coach walked in with an announcement. I received a call from the security office at the mall about a few of you, Coach Brown said. Apparently, some of you were out there with your jackets on, and when you left, the store managers noticed certain items were missing. If anyone knows anything, I am expecting you to tell me the truth. This is a bad reflection on the team and the university as a whole. I will be meeting with each of you individually in the next few minutes. After Coach Brown walked back to his office, the locker room became loud again. One of the starting players stood up and said that everyone was to tell the same story. Deshaun cringed inside because he knew he was being asked to lie to Coach Brown. What will this say about my witness as a Christian, he thought. Being confronted with impossible situations comes with the experience of living in a fallen world. Today's lesson tells us how to honor God in the midst of challenges. Now, Deshaun is in a somewhat of a hard place right now, because of the fact that here he is, he knows that he wasn't one of the ones that was in the mall stealing, but yet the ones that were in the mall stealing expect Deshaun to back them up with whatever story they decide to conjure up and to make sure that everybody's story is the same. Now, the one thing that we all know, if we've ever watched any type of Law and Order or any of those types of shows, the one thing that has always been apparent in knowing that somebody lying is that when everybody's story is exactly the same, somebody lying, because it don't veer off one way or another. Everything is exactly the same, just like it was rehearsed. So therefore, Deshaun is having to do a soul search, if you will, because of the fact that he knew that he wasn't one of the ones in the mall stealing, and they were in there laughing and talking about what they had done. So he actually know who was the ones in the mall stealing. But this is the thing that gets me, is the fact that you might as well come clean. Did you not hear where it said that they exactly, they were on camera and they recognized with their jackets. Exactly. So the one thing about it, coach is saying, I'm gonna give you a chance. I'm gonna meet each one of y'all individually. So I'm gonna give you a chance to come clean to me, because it is on video. So we know which ones were actually in the mall stealing. So for you to actually tell someone to lie for me, that's pretty much what they're doing, is telling him to lie for them. By you doing that, now you're going to put yourself in a position, because of the fact that now you go in there and you lie, knowing that he already know the truth. It's just like when your parents already know what you did, and they going to give you a chance to come clean. I'm not going to tell you some questions that my dad and my mama asked me, and I looked at them and said, no.
Not just your parents, but God. You know how we have to confess our sins
Exactly.
to God. God already knows what we did, but we still have to confess our sins. The coach, they already know. They got them on video.
Exactly.
They know who it is.
They
just
know.
Give them a chance to admit it.
Exactly. I'm gonna give you a chance to man up. You know, it's just like y'all, Michelle, man, y'all know when Mama used to ask me, Marvis, you been eating dirt? Dirt all over my mouth, and I say no. Because my thing is, if you asking me, you don't know. But that's a child's logic. I'm just gonna tell on myself. You know, one thing about these lessons, you got to look at yourself. Okay? So therefore, just like that's a prime example of coach already know who you are. That's why he gonna meet with you individually. Simple as that. The keep in mind says, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. Esther 4:16, King James Version. New Living Translation says, and even though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. You ready, D?
Yeah. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman. For the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did he reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone. They had showed him the people of Mordecai. And Mordecai told him all that had happened unto him, and the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries of the Jews, for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given to Shishon to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to change her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make requests before him for her people. And Hatch came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. And Esther spake unto Hatch and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. And all the king's servants and the people of the king's province do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of, hold on, y'all. All the king's servants and the people of the king's province do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such torhorn the king should hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. They told Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than holdest thou peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews for another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such as this time? Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer: Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish.
Amen. Amen. Now, you good? You good? This is a serious conversation going on between Esther and Mordecai, and we're gonna get further into this, and you'll see why this is such a conversation that's going on between the two of them. The people, places, and times. Like I said, Esther and Mordecai had a lot to discuss. The focus of the book of Esther, while the book of Esther holds a high degree of prominence in the Jewish community, it has not fared as well in the Christian community. Unlike other Old Testament scriptures, Esther is not a particularly religious book. It is certainly good literature, but it makes no direct reference to anything of a religious nature. Passages from the book of Esther are not quoted anywhere in the New Testament. God's name is not mentioned in any of its 10 chapters. God is not seen or heard to offer direct guidance to anyone. When Esther calls for a period of fasting, no direct reference to prayer is made. Even though it was canonized during the middle of the first millennium AD, the first Christian commentary on the book of Esther did not appear until the 9th century. Consequently, the book of Esther has been critically questioned by some of the Christian community. These concerns, however, have not dampened the book's capacity to stir the imagination and encourage Christian believers to defend what is morally right. The writer of the book of Esther. The book of Esther gives no clue as to its authorship. Most would agree that Esther was written by a Jew who was knowledgeable of Persian life and royal culture and familiar with the city of Susa and its environs. It is certain, however, that the writer was convinced that what was written really happened. While some may question the historicity of the book of Esther, its significance and moral message are timeless. The strength and value of biblical poetry do not hinge on an affirmative answer to the question, did this really happen? The greater question for believers is, what does this poetic literature teach about developing faith in God? The setting of the book of Esther. The events of this book took place in the days of Ahasuerus. Most of what is recorded happened in the royal court of Persia, located in a major capital city, the city of Shushan or Susa. While the story unfolds on the citadel of power and authority, it moves quickly to identify the oppressed Jews of the diaspora. These two social extremes, opulence, which is wealth, affluence, or abundance, authority, self-indulgence, and on one hand, and on poverty and oppression on other hand, characterize the people, places, and times of the book of Esther. In terms of moral character, King Ahasuerus lacked much to be desired. He ruled by impulse and was himself ruled by his own selfish and impulsive desires. He was quick to follow the counsel of his degenerate nobles and servants. He made few decisions on his own. His measure of a woman was her physical beauty and capacity to satisfy his sexual appetite. Given King Ahasuerus' character, it is not difficult to characterize the world over which he ruled. A society ruled by a spoiled brat tends to be brattish and brutish, untrustworthy and unsafe. King Ahasuerus' world, though ruled by law, was short on justice. Prior to the king's edict in Esther 8:11, the world over which he ruled was not a safe place for Jews. Esther's courage, clever and sagacious, which means keen judgment or discernment, rise to power, however, changed the king's world and gave Mordecai and the Jewish people a new leash on life. Now, I had to share all of that because of the fact that there was a lot of good background in there. When you think about this king and you look at how he ruled, when you think about it, my words, y'all, he was more like a puppet on a string because of the fact that he allowed others to tell him certain things and what should be done. And then he had that selfishness too. He was one of those that looked at the outside. If you look good to him, then you know what, you may get somewhere with me because you look good to me. So he had a selfish nature about him. Anybody want to say anything on the people, places, and time before we get into the background of this? There's like I said, this is a lot going on in this conversation between Esther and Mordecai because of the fact that with what King Ahasuerus is trying to do, it not only affects Mordecai, it also affects Esther. And the one thing about it is, Esther, everybody don't know exactly who Esther is. I'm gonna say it that way. Everybody don't know exactly who Esther is. So as we get further into this Sunday school lesson, it is going to be revealed to you exactly who Esther is and how this also directly affects her as well. Does anybody want to say anything before I go a little bit further in? All right, the background. King Ahasuerus gave 2 banquets, the first of which was for the VIP of his royal court. It lasted 180 days. The second banquet was for all the men in the citadel of Susa. It lasted for 7 days. The king spared no expense for the second banquet. While the king held his second banquet, Queen Vashti made a feast for the women in the royal house. It was during this second banquet that the now drunken King Ahasuerus sent a command to Queen Vashti to leave her banquet and come to his banquet in order to display her beauty before his male guests. When Queen Vashti refused to come, the king became furious and burned with anger. After the king's consultation with his chauvinist experts in matters of law and justice, Queen Vashti was banished from the royal court on the premise that her disobedience to the king's command set a bad example for women throughout the king's kingdom. I'm gonna stop right there for a minute. So now you already seeing the mindset of this king, y'all. If you don't do what I say do, then there's a problem. So right here, my words, y'all, he had a temper tantrum because of the fact that, you know, he was probably in there with the boys bragging and going on and carrying on, then sent word for Queen Vashti to come. I want y'all to see, you know. And Queen Vashti, you know, said, tell him pretty much, I'm busy. I got my own thing going on. So when he get word back, she said she not coming, now he mad. And then it's one of those things where he's like, well, I'll show her. So now we're going a little bit further. So the second chapter of Esther recounts Esther's rise to prominence in the king's court. Esther became queen in Vashti's place. So here it is, I'm gonna start right there. Since Queen Vashti didn't do what I wanted, I'm gonna get rid of her and I'm gonna get me a new queen. The story of Esther's rise from being an orphaned Jewish child to becoming queen is intriguing. Though a queen, Esther never forgot her stand-in father and old cousin, Mordecai. Esther's concern for Mordecai and Mordecai's concern for Esther ran deep. Eventually, it was Mordecai's life and that of his people that came under threat of death because of their Jewish nationality and also because of Mordecai's refusal to pay homage to Haman. Excuse me. Now, if you see right here, y'all, here's discrimination right here. This is an example of discrimination right here. Because of your nationality, I don't like you. It's pretty much what this is. An example of discrimination. What they say, anything that's going on right now, it's in the book. Shortly after Haman had received the king's approval to kill all Jews, Mordecai reminded Esther that while she had kept her Jewish identity a secret, she could do so no longer. For if you remain silent at this time, counseled Mordecai, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. Now I'm gonna say it like this. So pretty much what Mordecai was telling Esther, you in the right place at the right time, because with this going on against the Jews and them wanting to kill the Jews, they don't know that you are a Jew too. And even though you are the queen, if you remain silent, don't think that it's not going to eventually come out who you are. So therefore, this is the perfect time for you to be in the right position for you to help your own people. My words, y'all. Esther's decision is as clear as it is straightforward. I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. What courage! Esther's courage to risk everything freed and empowered her to make the best of an impossible situation. She did so in ways that honored God at a time when God's guidance seemed absent. Now, let me just say this, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. In Esther saying that, in order to go before the king, you just can't walk in the room where the king is. You've got to be summoned or invited to come in. So Esther taking a big chance on going. So therefore, that's why she's saying, if I perish, then I perish. Anybody want to say anything before we get further into this Sunday school lesson? All right, we got quite a few at-a glances this morning, y'all. Mordecai refuses to bow to Haman. Haman plots to destroy all Jews. Mordecai informs Esther of Haman's plot. Esther fears approaching the king about Haman's plot. Mordecai counsels Esther about her fears, and Esther calls a 3-day Jewish fast. So they getting prepared, y'all. They getting prepared. Mordecai refuses to bow to Haman. Just as the text does not tell us why Vashti refused to obey the king's command, neither are we told why Mordecai refused to bow to Haman. Whether Mordecai's refusal to bow was the result of a personal quarrel with Haman or the result of a larger issue is not evident. It is clear, however, that Haman's response to Mordecai's refusal to bow placed the entire Jewish community under threat of annihilation. It may be that Mordecai's refusal to bow and Haman's response were motivated by racial animosity. If racism was the motive, it helps to explain why the writer of the book of Esther would note that Haman was the son of Hammedatha, the Agite. The first readers would have quickly understood such a brief reference, and for they would have been familiar with the tribal and racial tension of their day and community. I'm gonna stop right there for a minute. So here we are with this. Mordecai refuses to bow to Haman. Now, one of the things that and these are my words now, Mordecai being a Jew, Mordecai did not worship Haman. So therefore, in his refusal to bow down, my words again, Mordecai had some other things going on. It's just like for us, there as part of our religion, there are certain things that we'll refuse to do if it goes against our religion. So here it is, Mordecai refused to bow to Haman, and Haman didn't like that. And so therefore, I'd already mentioned that there was some discrimination going on, and here we are, we're talking about right now, it says that it was racially motivated, being that racism being motivated by the fact that Mordecai was a Jew. Assuming the tension between Haman and Mordecai to be racially motivated, it is easy to see how Haman might conclude that all Jews will behave like Mordecai, and such thinking reminiscent of Mumitzkin's flawed counsel to King Ahasuerus concerning Vashti. Therefore, if all Jews are expected to behave like Mordecai, then it follows that all Jews should be destroyed along with Mordecai. I'm gonna stop right there. So since Mordecai refuses to bow down, all y'all Jews exactly alike. So I'm pretty much gonna wipe out all of y'all because of the fact that if Mordecai is gonna be like this, y'all just like Mordecai too. So in other words, they saying birds of a feather flock together. So I'm gonna get rid of one bird, all birds. Thinking Thusly, Haman looks for a way to destroy all the Jews. The possibility that Haman was driven by racial prejudice finds support in Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews, for he naturally hated the Jews because his own race, the Amalekites, had been destroyed by them. So see, he holding on to a grudge because of the fact that since y'all were destroyed by Jews, you hate Jews, all of them. You don't know them, but because they are a Jew, I hate you for who you are. Does that not sound familiar about? Exactly. I don't know you, but because your skin not like my skin, I don't like you. Anybody want to say anything on Mordecai refuses to bow to Haman? All right. Haman plots to destroy all Jews. Because of a quarrel between Haman and Mordecai that was possibly spurred by racial prejudice, a whole nation of people is placed in jeopardy. Can y'all imagine me and you having an argument? Just the two of us. But because the two of us is having an argument, I'm going to bring the whole nation in on our argument. The security of the masses is always fragile when they live under the authority and power of insecure, misguided leaders. Leaders whose decisions have far-reaching consequences should be selected with care and surrounded by morally responsible persons who are known for their wisdom and integrity. Let me start right there. Do we not see some of this right now going on? In positions of authority where they should be about right, but they're about their own selfish gains. The one thing about it, he said, anything that's going on, you see it right now.
We see some of every lesson going on right now.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's all what we're talking about right now. It's in the news right now. The innocent masses deserve leaders who are not gripped by racial animosity and self-serving motives. Well, and there's a lot of them with self-serving motives, and think that we as a people can't see their self-serving motives. The one thing about it is, you ask God to show you and to reveal some stuff to you, he'll show you. And the only way you don't see it is that you're not looking and you're not listening and you refuse to see it. Anybody want to say anything on Haman's plot to destroy all Jews? Before we go down to Mordecai informs Esther of Haman's plot. Huh?
Like you say, everything that's what's happening now, it ain't just started just now. Because Mordecai was a Jew and Esther was too. But now the other folk didn't know that. But now he knew, but she didn't know. And all of this stuff was happening now is about two peoples don't like one another and killing up thousands of people just because you don't like one another. And the people that are killing one another are family folks. I'm telling you, it just does something to you when you look at the Bible and see what's going on. And as she was a Jew, now the king really loved her because she was a good-looking woman. And he had her in his harem of women. And so when Vashti messed up, I'm going to stop.
Okay, we'll pick that back up. So what you said, he was driven by what he saw. Mordecai informs Esther of Haman's plot. Verses 7 through 8 indicate that apart from Esther's presence in the royal palace, Mordecai had an active pipeline into the inner workings and conversations of the king's court. How else would he have learned about the details of Haman's plot? There is nothing in the text to suggest that Mordecai secured his information from Esther. Mordecai is aware of the bribe monies and the amount. He is aware of the details of the king's edicts and possesses a copy of it. He knows Esther has not seen the king's edict, and he provides her with a copy. Though separated from direct contact with Esther for about 5 years, Mordecai seems to assume that he still has an ally in Esther, even though he refuses to the clothes she sends him. I'm gonna stop right there for a minute. So even though Esther and Mordecai, family, they both Jews. Esther is in the palace now. And with Esther being in the palace, there are some things that Esther is not aware of, even though she's in the palace. So Mordecai still has a way of getting information to Esther, and this is something that Mordecai is letting Esther know, is that Haman has a plot, that he is going to kill the Jews. I have the information. Matter of fact, I got a copy of the information as far as what he's planning on doing. And so therefore, not only do I have a copy, I got you a copy too, and I'm gonna get that copy to you so you can see what Haman trying to do. I know about how much money he getting. I know everything about it. I know about all the little transactions that's going on with it. So I need to get you in the loop so you know what's going on. So even though this plot is going on, it's not one of those things where even though you thought it was hush-hush, there's a leak. And somebody done let something out, and Mordecai know what's going on. And now that Mordecai know what's going on, Mordecai getting ready to tell Esther what's going on. So Mordecai has access to the information and personnel, and he uses resources and his creativity to plead his case with Esther on behalf of their people. So the thing about it is, even though this plot is going out, and it hinged on the fact that Mordecai refused to bow, and you got mad because he wouldn't bow. So since Mordecai didn't bow, not only am I going to get rid of you, Mordecai, I'm getting rid of all the Jews. And so therefore, with that being the case, I need to let Esther know what's going on behalf of all of our people, because of the fact that this just does not affect me and the Jews. It affect you too, Esther, because we family, you one of us. Anybody want to say anything on Mordecai informs Esther on Haman's plot before we get to Esther fears approaching the king about Haman's plot?
You know, Sister Teacher, I was just thinking. See now, Haman didn't know he done got permission to build a cross. He was gonna make a spectre out of Mordecai. Hang him on that cross, kill him. Do you know the Lord fixed it so that that cross that he made to hang Mordecai on, that's the cross, but he was hung on that cross himself. I'm gonna stop this.
Yep, that's what Daddy said. That's why. Exactly, and that's why you got to watch what you say and watch what you do, because while you trying to get somebody else, that script get flipped on you, and what you meant bad for somebody, it ended up being on you. Esther fears approaching the king about Haman's plot. Esther's response to Mordecai's appeal is a combination of fear, ambivalence, and an apparent commitment to royal protocol. Her fear of violating royal protocol is evident in her citing the law that one must be summoned to gain access to the king. Esther's reasons, therefore, that since she had not been summoned to come before the king during the past 30 days, she does not expect to be summoned anytime soon. However, the pressure upon Esther to act quickly is heightened by her awareness that Haman already has the king's approval to act against the Jews. Esther recognizes that she does not have the luxury of delaying her decision. So now that she's gotten the information and she knows what's going on, the thing about it is, as it was previously stated, you, like I said, you just can't walk into the king's court and say, hey, I came to see the king. I can't do that, because of the fact that if the king didn't summon you, you can't go. And if you go and you are not invited, then you put your life in danger, because of the fact that if I didn't tell you to come, what you doing here? And then it could be a thing of off with his head, because of the fact that I did not tell you to come and you came anyway. So now I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna make an example out of you. If Esther is to give Mordecai's request an affirmative answer, she must do so quickly. She knows that the answer Mordecai expects is an answer she wants to give, but she's afraid, and understandably so. For anyone who approaches the king without being summoned, according to the Persian law of that day, to be put to death. So Esther knows this. Esther knows, you know, Esther is one of those, Esther is, my word now, she is bilingual in this sense. She knows what's going on with her Jewish family and the danger that they're in right now. And she also knows that being in the royal palace and being, if you will, royalty, there are rules and protocol in place there. And if I don't follow the royal guidelines, then I put my own life in jeopardy. So I've got to really be careful how I go about doing what I need to be in an effort to save my family and my people. Esther's ambivalence is registered by her reference to the exception to the law. The king can extend his scepter and grant anyone access without prior summons. Esther's unstated question is, will the king extend his scepter? Obviously, Esther had some doubts about the status of her relationship with the king. The fact that she is the king's wife is no buffer against Persian law. Just because I'm the king's wife don't mean that I get a pass. If this is the law and these are the guidelines and the protocol, just because I'm his wife don't mean that you exempt and you don't have to follow protocol. So Esther is really taking a chance. So Esther is hoping that when she gets ready to approach the king, that he does extend his scepter and allows her to come in and talk to him about a situation that's going on. Anybody want to say anything on Esther's fear approaching the king about Haman's plot before we get to Mordecai counsels Esther about her fears?
You know, Sister Teacher, I was just thinking here, and when you read the story about Esther and the king and his harem of women, y'all know he had a bunch of good-looking young women. That's what he did. And he would keep them in a certain way all the time. Had somebody looking out after him. And whenever he got ready for one, he'd tell them, you go and get such and such a one to bring her to me. You'll be surprised, y'all, what was going on. And I'm telling you, you name it, and it was happening in his time. See, I done been with this one here last week. I want you to go and get this one here and bring her in here to me today. I'm telling y'all, when you get in the Bible and you see some of the stuff that was happening, you just can't believe what was going on. And it's happening today. The same things happening. Keep them young women, wash them up and have them in milk and honey. They would clean them up that way, y'all. And keep the skin looking good and say, now I want you to bring this one in tomorrow. I'm going to stop.
But you know what, Daddy, you brought up a good point, because if you notice, in this Esther fears approaching the king about Haman's plot, she hadn't seen the king in the past 30 days, even though she was his wife. Mordecai counsels Esther about her fears. When Esther's ambivalence and fears are reported to Mordecai, he reframes his original request and leaves Esther with no possibility of escape. In essence, Mordecai reminded Esther that she too was a Jew and therefore would not be able to escape Haman's plot. On the other hand, there was the possibility that Esther's unbidden presence might tempt the king to recall their earlier amorous nights and extend his scepter. Now, I'm going to stop right there for a minute. So Mordecai, knowing that, I'm going to say it like this, Esther's scared, y'all. She's scared to go in here and approach the king for fear that if I go in here and approach the king, I may lose my life. But she said, if I perish, then I perish. However, she's scared. So Mordecai is like, okay, I understand that you may be scared, but you got to keep in mind that even though you are scared, you a Jew too, which means that if they kill us, they're going to find out about you, and they're going to get you too. One wonders whether Esther received Mordecai's comments about her racial ancestry as a threat, since no one but he knew that she was a Jew. Was Mordecai threatening to blow her cover? Mordecai's aim was to get Esther to act, to go to the king and beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. While Mordecai's words in verse 14 may be difficult for us to understand, his message to Esther was clear. In essence, Mordecai said, Esther, either way you go, you risk death. Let me stop right there for a minute. So when you're looking at this, some people may want to think that, okay, I'm giving you an ultimatum because of the fact I know who you really are. And that's how some people go, so are you threatening me? No, I'm just reminding you, we family. We in the same boat. Just like I know, somebody else may know. Then when they find out, they gonna get you too. So it is in your best interest, it is in our best interest that you go and talk to the king about what Haman is trying to do. And that way you looking out for the whole family. You looking out for your whole ancestry line. Esther, either way you go, you risk death. And that's the thing that she realized. If I go in there and he don't extend the scepter, I risk death. If I don't say anything and Haman's plot is carried out, I risk death. So either way it go, you could say that Esther was between a rock and a hard place. So therefore, here you go. Choose the lesser risk and dare to believe that the king would give you a favorable audience. Then, with a positive spin and a softened diplomatic choice of words, Mordecai adds an effort to accentuate the opportunity of a lifetime. Who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this? Esther is trapped. I said she's between a rock and a hard place. That's being trapped. By going uninvited to the king in the interest of her people, she risks death. But there is the possibility that the king may extend the scepter and give her the attention. By refusing Mordecai's command, Esther risks exposure of her own nationality, which would inevitably place her in the place of Haman's wrath. Mordecai reminds Esther that she cannot keep silent. If she does not act, she and her father's family will suffer the consequences of her cowardice. Esther, you might as well say Esther getting it from both sides because of the fact that even though I am the queen, I don't have any power, if you will. My words, y'all. I don't have no power to go in there, but I can go and try to ask. Even in me being brave enough or courageous enough to go in there and ask does not mean that what I go in there and ask is going to be granted to me. But if I don't go, I'm putting a lot of people at risk, including myself. But if I do go, I'm putting myself at risk. So either way it go, Esther is at risk, no matter how you look at it. This is a defining moment for Esther, caught between an opportunity that rests on a thin hope and a threat that promises certain death. Esther prepares to cast her lot with the future of her people. It's like Esther going, my words are, she biting the bullet. I gotta do what I gotta do. However it turned out, she can say, at least I tried. Anybody want to say anything on Mordecai counsels Esther about her fears before we go to Esther calls a 3-day Jewish fast?
You know, Sister Teacher, you see, as I said a few minutes ago, Esther was a good-looking young woman. And this is what she banking on when she go before the king. He ain't gonna, I'm using my word now, he ain't gonna turn me down because
Right.
it's been a month since I was in there with him. So when I go in here now, he ain't gonna turn me down. Then I get a chance to tell him what I want to tell him and ask him about something. So this is what was going on. Now, by her being a good-looking woman, and when she went up there, he held out the scepter for her to come on in. I'm gonna stop.
Thank you, Daddy. Esther calls a 3-day Jewish fast. Having reconciled herself to the dangers involved, Esther makes her decision. She agrees to Mordecai's wishes and makes plans to approach the king. Esther recognizes, however, that if she is to act upon her decision, if she is to approach the king, she would need the moral support and encouragement of the Jewish community. Moreover, she recognizes the seriousness of the task before her. She also recognizes her need for strength beyond her own. She seeks this support by asking Mordecai to institute a 3-day fast among the Jews. Esther's request of Mordecai is accompanied by a promise and a courageous sense of commitment. Let me stop right there. So, when I already recognize that Esther is scared, she is, but Esther knows that whether or not I'm afraid, I still have to do it. So, in order for me to do what I need to do, my words now, Esther got her prayer warriors now. My words, y'all. I'm painting my picture. So you know how when you getting ready to go through something, you know who you can count on. I'm going through this, so I need you to go in prayer for me while I'm dealing with what I'm dealing with. So what she did was she called in the cavalry, if you will, and said, okay, we all need to be on one accord. So we gonna fast for 3 days, day and night. We're going to fast. So therefore, as we are fasting, we are, if you will, my words again, y'all are going to build up my courage and my strength to be able to go in here and see the king on our behalf. I know that this is going to be a dangerous encounter for me because I'm not sure of what's exactly going to happen. And like Daddy said, well, I ain't seen him in 30 days, so hopefully that he will welcome me. And then as we're in here, my words again, we can have a little pillow talk, and I can tell him what Haman is up to in an effort that the king will stop Haman in his tracks, and he won't be able to fulfill the plot that he has towards the Jews. Anybody want to say anything before I go a little bit further? When this is done, when the 3-day fast has been completed, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. This statement should not be understood as a conditional promise and commitment. Esther is confident that Mordecai will institute the fast and that the Jewish community will participate. Although the Jewish community was already engaged in a fast, Esther's fast is to be a different kind of fast. Her request for a fast in verse 16 was specific. Fast ye for me. I need y'all to fast on my behalf. While there is no specific reference to prayer and God, this fast is to be a fast of intercession and petition. The fast referenced in Esther 4:3 was a fast of grief and mourning. It was accompanied by weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Instead of a time of grief and mourning, Esther's fast was to be a time of hope, a time of rallying, and giving moral support and encouragement. This was a fast of Esther's faith being strengthened by those coming together, and them, if you will, they're covering her. We're covering you with this fast. We're going to be on one accord. We are all in this together. So therefore, we are rallying because as they've mentioned, some of the fasting was going on. Some of the fasting that had happened, and this was not one of those fasts where it was about a mourning and a grieving time. This was not one of those fasts. This was a fast, my words, y'all, a fast of encouragement, a fast for strength, and this was a fast of building up the faith. Because if you know, this was in this book when I was studying this, it talks about it was a fast where it was talking about your faith. Even though you think that God was absent, you still kept the faith and you did what you needed to do. So here is Esther. Esther is doing what she needs to do, but she is calling in others in the faith, my words, y'all, other believers to come together, and we're going to fast in this. We're going to get on one accord so that we can get the king to stop Haman for what he's trying to do to us, because this affects all of us. Anybody want to say anything on Esther calling that 3-day fast before we bring this on down to a close? All right, liberating lesson. Being confronted with impossible situations comes with the experience of living in a fallen world. There are times when options are limited and all of one's choices have less than satisfactory consequences. Making up one's mind and knowing how to respond to impossible situations in a way that honor God is an awesome challenge. The challenge is doubly awesome when God's guidance seems not to be forthcoming. Impossible situations are more easily handled when God shows his face and gives us a clear sense of direction. There are times, however, when God's guidance seems veiled at best, and we have to exercise our own freedom to choose. During such times, courage and a supportive community of faith can help make the difference. Esther's story teaches that when God's guidance seems to be absent, our faith, courage, and the support of other believers are the ingredients necessary to make the best of an impossible situation. But the one thing about it is, y'all, they had faith. And he says in his word, all you needed was mustard seed faith, and you could do great things. So when you think about mustard seed faith, and you're thinking about Esther and when she called that 3-day fast of all of the Jews and their mustard seed faith coming together, that says with that mustard seed faith, you can move mountains. With them coming together on one accord and fasting, they can move mountains as well. Application for activation. Think about a defining moment in your life, a time when you had to make a decision and God's guidance was not as clear as you would have liked. What things influenced your decision? Now consider the lessons you have learned from the book of Esther about dealing with impossible situations. Determine from the book of Esther how to deal with impossible situations and apply these lessons when you are faced with difficult decisions in the future. Now you think about Esther. Esther had to have some facts laid out for her, y'all. And in looking at the facts, she had to make the right decision based on the facts that were presented before her. So as we bring this lesson to a close this morning, I'm going to leave you with this. What we weave in this world, we will wear in heaven. Amen.